This is one of the most broken builds that we have right here on Baldur's Gate, and I do feel that I need to clarify because there has been a couple of comments out there saying something that it has nothing to do with this being a mod. Because yes, it is a mod and it is not broken or overpowered because it's a mod. As a matter of fact, we have very similar builds that we are going to be discussing that we have already built here on the channel. This is just a female version of a warlock, which is it has the same degree of powerfulness, and as a matter of fact, this build is going to be lacking in some things that the Hexadin may have, or that the Blade Warlock may have. So this is from the mod manager. It is available on PC, on PlayStation, and Xbox as well. All you have to do is just go right here, click the subclasses tab, and here that's where you will find the witch class. And this is very interesting because I do want to mention and I do want to stress out that this is as OP as it gets. You're going to have like 35 armor class, and also the enemy has to be fighting you with disadvantage, and you're going to be using your spellcaster modifier to deal melee damage. It's just all over the place. Just singly the 35 armor class, that's just something very broken because basically the enemy has to land a critical hit to deal damage to you, especially if they're going to be having to do such a thing while having to go through your disadvantage because of the darkness. And this is essentially the same thing as a warlock would be, and as a matter of fact, both of the classes come from the same principles. It's just that this is a homebrew class. Have in mind that homebrew classes have always been a thing on Dungeons and Dragons. This is not there's mods that are designed for them to be cheating, that alter the numbers, that turn you into a god or turn you invincible. Here we're using the rule set of the 5th edition to make a homebrew class that it still follows that rule set, and that it is broken because you have access to that rule set. The only difference is, for example, the warlock. When it comes to the semantics of the class, the warlocks, they made a pact with the devil. That's how they gain their powers. The witches, they have their coven, and the coven basically involves the witch engaging into sexual activity with the devil to gain their power, and essentially you get similar powers. So they are very similar classes when it comes to the overall mythos of them, but also because of the powers that they use, they are very, very similar as well, because they're getting their power from the devil. And essentially that's what this is going to be. This is just a female version of the warlock, and both of them are going to be very overpowered. We have already built the warlock. Let's talk about building the witch class right now. And like always, I am going to guide you through the ability scores that you are going to need as you level up, because we're going to be respecting our character because of some access that we have to itemization on the 2nd and 3rd act of the game. Your main stats is going to be intelligence. That's where you're going to be using to as attack and damage roll, and because of a specific spell that we have right here. So you have access to this since level 1, the Arcane Blade. Your weapon becomes magical and it deals 1 to 8 slashing damage, and it uses the spellcasting ability for your attack rolls. Our spellcasting ability with this class is intelligence, so that's the one that we want to have on 16. And then our second focus is going to be both dexterity and constitution. Dexterity is going to allow us to have a little bit of extra armor class, and constitution is going to allow us to keep concentrated on our spells that we have access to. So essentially this is how your character is going to be looking like on the first act of the game. On the first act of the game, you only get access to medium armors that give you +2 to your armor class, meaning that 14, it's just fine right here. And then on the second act of the game, we have access to the Gloves of Dexterity, meaning that we're going to downgrade our Dexterity because of that, and that's when we're going to be increasing the rest of our points right here to have a little bit more of saving throws on the rest of the stats that we have right here. The Gloves of Dexterity are going to give us +4 armor class with this exotic medium armors that we're going to be using. And then finally, On the third act of the game, we're going to stop using the gloves of dexterity, and as a matter of fact, this is for the third act of the game, we're going to downgrade our constitution all the way in here. We're going to downgrade our strength all the way in here, and we're going to change our attack modifier and damage rolls. We're not going to be using this anymore, because we're going to be using strength. We are going to be using the gloves of the tyrant, although I'll go into detail a little bit later on when we talk about the itemization. Just have in mind that your strength is going to be 23, and then your dexterity should be and must be at 17, because we're going to be using moderately armor, which is going to increase this to 18, yielding us +4 into armor class. Our intelligence is still going to be 16, and that's going to allow us to have we're going to be using the amulet of constitution, and that's going to allow us to have our saving throws on wisdom and charisma. The spells are really not that important. As a matter of fact, there's just a couple of things that you should be taking as a must. First and foremost, the one that you should take at level 1 is going to be the Arcane Blade, because remember that when we're level 1, our highest stat for attack and damage roll is going to be intelligence. That's what we're going to be using to deal our damage. So Arcane Blade, this is a must. And then we have the Thaumaturgy. I like to use this just to have advantage on intimidation and persuasion, which is always very useful. And then we have lesser regeneration, which is very, 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 very powerful. However, you can also take witchy things like Fan Familiar or Speak with Animals and things like that. On level 2, we have access to our subclass. This time, we're going to be building a Witch Blade. The Witch Blade is essentially going to be a witch that's always going to be fighting in darkness and killing people because of that, and pulling people towards the darkness. It's always going to be empowering her physical martial prowess because of that. It has one downside compared to, for example, the Warlock, the martial Warlock, and that is that the Warlock can attack from inside towards outside of the darkness. This gal can, she can't, so she has to be moving throughout the battlefield. It's going to be somewhat wobbly. I'll explain to you in a little while. And then as for the spells, the same thing is going to happen as with the previous build. Since we're going to be using darkness, just have in mind that you're not using any other spell that requires concentration. Other than that, you choose the spells that you want, and you're going to be getting native spells as you level up that we're going to be using to deal damage. For the passives right here, they are really not that important, so just take whichever one that you would like to take. However, at level 3 we have very important decisions and concessions to make. We have our darkness, which is going to be the main thing that we're going to take right here. This is going to be the bread and butter of our build, and then you're going to decide which what is it that you're going to be using. Have in mind that I do not advise for you to use two-weapon fighting. I'd say that it's a little bit better to go with great weapon fighting and dueling as well. Both of them are going to work just fine. You can use dueling with shields, which is going to be just amazing. However, like I mentioned, if you do that, you can actually reach like 40 armor class, but I mean, that's just too overkill, dude. You're going to be dealing much more DPS with the great weapon fighting, and your armor class is just so skyrocket high that it doesn't matter that you're not using a shield. So I would always go for DPS for this class. You'll see why in a little while. At level 4, we have access to our first feat. I think that this should be on the first act of the game, so we're going to be taking the moderately armor right here. On the first act of the game, your dexterity is not going to be as high, but you're still going to raise that 1 point into dexterity. This is having in mind that you are on the end game. Our dexterity should be 18. If you're using an exotic material medium armor, that means that you can get +4 to your armor class if you're using the one from the second act of the game, or the agility armor as we're using right here with our beautiful gal Shadow Heart. Nothing really major happens until you reach level 6, and this is where the character class gets really broken and overpowered. This is where our character class is finally established, because here you're going to get access to Kismet's Eye. This is what's going to allow you to see through magical darkness. Remember that dark vision is not enough to see through magical darkness, so you're going to need Kismet's Eye. and then you already have the modelly armor because of the modelly armor. So it appears that I have it right here, but it's not because you have it as a native. You still have to take the modelly armor, so that's something that you have to do. And then on the class passives, this is what's going to allow you to choose the enhanced body. Essentially, what it's going to happen now is that you're going to be able to have a hasted character that doesn't require concentration to haste itself, and then at the same time you can use your concentration to focus on your darkness. On level 7, something very important happens as well. First and foremost, you get access to the Mage Blade, which means that if you're proficient with the weapon that you're using, you can use your intelligence modifier to do a little bit more of extra slashing damage. So it's always a nice idea to have a little bit of more extra intelligence, but also the Grasping Bind, because the Grasping Bind is going to pull enemies towards itself. We'll dive into detail right here on this guy on the gameplay section of the video. On level 8, you get more class passives. This is not really that important. We are not going to be using Magical Ambush because this only targets spells, and we cannot use spells in our darkness. So most of the time we're going to be using melee damage in here. As for our feat right here, we're going to take the Great Weapon Master. A little bit more passives at level 9, nothing really important. I like to take the Witchcraft in here. At level 11, you get access to the Witchcraft Mastery, which is what I like to take. And then finally, at level 12, you get more passives. I like to take the Living Shadow because we're always going to be on the shadows. And then we have an extra little spell in here. Remember that always take spells that don't require concentration because you already have that occupied with your darkness. And then finally, we're going to take a little bit of an extra ability improvement in here to raise our intelligence to 18, which is what's going to allow us to have a little bit more of extra DPS because of the features that we have received throughout our level with this class. Outfitting our character is going to be somewhat wobbly. As for the armor, you're going to be using medium armor with exotic material. Remember, link in the description for the one that you can take on the Act 2 of the game. And then you're going to be using the Helldust boots on the Act 1 of the game. You get access to a very similar ones that allow you to not to get prone, so long as you are concentrated. As for the rings, you're always going to be using the regular melee character rings, the Strange Conduit ring and the Killer Sweetheart. In here, you're going to be using the Amulet of Greater Health. This is what's interesting. Your globes are going to be changing act dependent. On the first act of the game, nothing really major. On the second act of the game, you're going to be using the Gloves of Dexterity. On the third act of the game, you're going to be using the Gauntlets of Giant Strength. At this point, our attack rolls and damage rolls are going to be coming from Strength instead of Intelligence. So Intelligence is now just important to increase our... it's going to give us like 4 dices of damage, I believe, because of the features that we receive from the class. But our attack rolls and damage rolls are going to be coming from the Gauntlets of Giant Heal Strength, because that's what's going to give you the most advantage in here. That's going to be a key element of the gist of everything with this class, because all throughout the rendition of the gameplay you would be using the Arcane Blade to instead of the strength, you would be using the intelligence as a attack roll and damage roll. Once you reach the end game and you have those gauntlets slotted, you're not going to be using this guy anymore, simply because it's going to downgrade your damage because your intelligence is on 18, your strength is on 23, so you're going to be using strength. You do not want for you to use your spellcasting ability as attack rolls and damage rolls anymore. As you level up, you are going to receive buffs to your melee damage. First, it's going to be the Voltaic Edge, which is going to add 1d6 lightning damage for 5 turns. And then you're going to get access to the Burning Edge. This is at level 6, I believe. That's 2 to 12 fire damage for 5 turns. And then you're going to get access finally to the Face Edge, which is going to give you 3 to 18 force damage for 5 turns. This is using your Witchcraft ability. This is just basically more melee damage. Now, the real gist of everything is that if you want to be casting spells, you can, because you have access to a huge array of spells that you can by all means be using. But more than anything, it's going to be your darkness. You're going to cast your darkness, and while you are inside, not a lot of people wants to deal damage to you. They prefer to stay outside. Sometimes they are going to throw the occasional projectile here and towards inside of your darkness. But since they don't want to come inside from darkness, you're going to pull them. Remember that I told you that this right here, this is very much important, your grasping bind, because the grasping bind is what's going to be pulling enemies towards you inside of the darkness, and inside of the darkness you have advantage against the enemies because they are blinded. And also you have access, I should have mentioned that you should take the mirror image, because this is going to increase your armor class as well. Natively, once you have a hasted character, you're going to have a total of 24 armor class. If you add that 10 armor class from your mirror image, that's going to be like 34 armor class. That's going to be even more if you're using a shield and what have you. So you're virtually unkillable and you deal lots and lots of tremendous damage. The only downside is for you to be able to cast spells opposite to, for example, the Warlock that has the let's say he has the Eldritch Blast, so he can be blasting things from inside towards outside. If you want to cast spells, you have to go outside from the darkness. But since you are a hasted character, you can go outside, cast your spells, and then also one very useful thing to be using is like the Conjure Barrage, which is this is something that you're going to be receiving basically natively as you level up your character. This is not a concession, this is not a decision, this is something that you get as a baseline of the character, so this can be used to deal damage to the enemies that are outside from it. It's just powerful, it's just broken. You have so much armor, and also the enemy has disadvantages against you. You cannot be, the enemies cannot use spells against you. And I want to stress out, because I know that this causes a little bit of confusion. People like to say that most of the enemies in the game have dark vision. Dark vision is not enough. The only things that can deal damage to you because of that are devils, because devils that have devil sight that allows them to see through magical darkness. But your armor class is just so high that you don't really care even then. So that's just like about 20% of the enemies in the game that you're going to have a little bit of not that extra edge. Anyways, if you like the content, so like and super appreciated. No told you today you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye.